Hello, everyone. I guess we start. Maybe Florian joins later. Who knows? Probably his laptop reboots and then the headset is broken and the typical things that happen. Okay, I put the agenda. We have now this Google Docs, what we discussed last time. Chris created it for me, and yeah, I put everything inside. First point, Chris asked me, do we want to record the meetings? He could set it up so that this works automatically, like, I don't know, for other workgroup meetings, or would you prefer not to record it? Don't know. I have no real opinion about it. Usually it's a rather casual discussion. No recording means you can discuss also a little bit left and right. Hi.
I have nothing against recordings, but if you want to re-watch things which were discussed and you could not join.
I also like the idea because it's an open source project. Why not? Like, there's no secret in it. I hope so.
Okay. Anything from Broadcom side? Strong opinion against it, or should we? So I would simply ask Chris to set it up. Nothing. Okay. Then down. Good. Next topic I have on the agenda is the CPU assignment for app instances with more than 8 gig memory, which is currently kept. And there has been a longer discussion with several options. And the initial proposal was to move everything over to Diego and let it configure there. Then Eric and Amelia came up and said, well, in the long run, CPU might be handled as a separate, independently configurable resource with own quotas, etc. And moving everything to Diego would be a step into the wrong direction. So the proposal is then back on the table to make those strange limits configurable on CAPI. And yeah, I opened an issue, proposed some, maybe yeah, it's this 3588. I can put it in the chat, it's maybe faster. And if nobody objects, we would then simply implement this because we have a use case for such app instances and then allow configuration. We would configure it the same way as it is right now. If we have some better ideas for the parameter names. And we would, I mean, I don't think that this weight, CPU weight as it is specified right now is a good parameter between Cloud Controller and Diego, but I don't want to overload yeah, the story with additional undiscussed functionality. So just do the minimum that is required to set the to allow for more CPU. That would mean that a 16 gig app would get a value of 200%, and Diego would then assign more shares compared to the others, and as to smaller applications. And as a result, a app container with 16 gig would get double the amount of shares compared to a app container with 8 gigs.
Will BBS accept CPU weights over 100%?
As far as I understood the Diego colleagues, yes. If not, I would ask them to do so. At the end of the day, it's just a relative yeah, measurement. There was one discussion about the precision and whether what means 100%, how many shares is that, but the absolute numbers are meaningless, at least at the moment. So I know from SAP side, it's the Diego team that wants to have this feature. So we would get it at the end. Okay. Yeah, I will ping Plum. That's one of the colleagues from our side to look at that one more time, and then we would go ahead and do it in the next, I don't know, 2 weeks or so. Not much effort. Good. Yeah, there was
It
this,
looks like it is capped at 100, assuming I'm
Yeah.
reading the code right.
Okay, then yeah.
So that might lead to some fun coordination issues also.
Okay.
So I mean,
Alright.
I guess one of the options is you could, well, I don't know, potentially could scale everything else, since it's all relative values, if you can change the max property. So if you,
Yeah, but then
if you configure it to 16 gigs of memory, then you could make it so 16 gigs is 100% and 8 gigs is now 50% or something like that.
That's so ugly. I don't like it at all.
I mean, it's all relative. So 200 over 200 is the same as 100 over 100.
Yeah, sure. But then I'm pretty sure we have some strange customers who have their apps not exactly designed for Cloud Foundry, and then they want the biggest memory they ever can get. And sooner or later, it will be not 16, but 32, 64, and so on and so on. Yeah. Okay, I will ping Plum about it, ask him to check it, and then I would like to see at least a solution that doesn't stop at 16. It would be embarrassing after that, what we have. Yeah. Okay, next thing would be CF delete is a issue with CF CLI actually about delete service. We discussed it last time. There's an issue open and maybe some opinions. In contrast to the past, CF8 delete service now deletes all service bindings, which was done by intention. That's fine to have it. I think the argumentation is to have it consistent with delete org and delete space that also deletes recursively. Now with delete service, this recursive deletion does not only impact directly contained resources. If I delete a space and all the apps contained in the space are deleted, that's probably intended and all fine. But if I delete a service instance, it can impact other applications, and that's somehow surprising. At least it was surprising for our users that broke some productive applications by doing this. And the question is if we can change the behavior in only in the CLI to go back to the old CF6, CF7 behavior, so that the service, or you can delete a service only if there are no service bindings anymore. We could add for CI use cases where you want this new behavior a recursive flag that again deletes everything, cleans it up. There was another use case mentioned in some bug in the past where somebody says a credential leaked and we want to really get rid of everything because those credentials were somehow shared between the bindings. Okay, there would be an option. And then if there's agreement from the CLI colleagues that it would not veto, then we could think how to implement it with an extra API query, or maybe better to add a recursive parameter to service instance deletion endpoint. Of course, here we cannot change the default behavior. This is something, of course, we would not do. But in the UX, I guess the default behavior change is maybe acceptable. If there's a good reason not to do it, okay, then it is as it is. Just wanted to, get some more opinions about it, and then we could continue here as well. Yeah, next thing, CFCLI. Unfortunately, we have nobody from CLI here today. We got the feedback that the CFCLI, CF8, of course, we talk only about CF8, gets really slow when we apply it for large spaces. Think of several hundred apps, services, routes. And just as an example, listing all the applications for 800 apps takes 5 minutes, which is slow, really slow. And I looked into it for this use case. I asked for some logs, and there were at least, I found 4 points that contribute to that. So first of all, this landscape was in good shape. All the API calls were fast. That's not the point. So there's no problem in the cloud controller itself. However, CFCLI uses page size of 50, which is, makes it artificially slow. That just because of the many round trips. And our proposal would here, why do we have 50? Can we use also, say, the maximum 5K? For small spaces, nothing changes. It will be fast. I don't think it will have a huge performance impact on big spaces, because 5K is anyway possible via the API. Why not use it? So that would, I think, bring already 2/3 of the performance, or bring down the time by 2/3 or something like that. Then there are follow-up issues like there's URL length limitations, and that impacts list requests when you have a list of grids. I think there's little we can do about it. Maybe here and there in some CLI commands, one could use better queries, not by grids, but maybe by space or whatever fits. But it's a GET request, and if you want to have parameters, you have to pass them in the URL, and that one is limited. So it's probably something difficult to change. And the next bigger thing was especially for listing applications, there are no bulk requests for getting the process stats. And that means 1 round trip per application, and for 800 application, that's slow. So maybe adding a list endpoint for process stats that makes only sense if there's also a bulk request API at the, log cache, where the information comes actually from. Would be probably some bigger change. Another alternative would be to have an option like CF apps -- no stats. If you just want to have the name, but it's cumbersome. Having it fast is the nicer solution, I guess.
Is there currently a GitHub issue on the CLI talking
Not
about?
yet. I just wrote it down, and I would then open GitHub issues for the single things. The final problem that I observed or written down is that if you list the applications, and if it takes 5 minutes, then the likelihood increases that one application gets deleted during that time or redeployed and the process disappeared. And then suddenly the CFCLI completely breaks with a 400, and it should not break. It should say process is not available anymore or whatever, but print out the other information. That's also not nice UX. So these were the things I found. I guess the next step here is to open issues, and then we can see what can be solved with how much effort. So at the moment, I would not promise that we invest in CLI because we have no stakes yet there. But maybe this pagination is a simple thing one could do, or also we could do. I mean, that's not rocket science, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the argument for that is also very good, because pagination, the use case for pagination mostly is if you just want to display a subset. So you have a web page, you just display 50 items, and then you inherit the the pagination to the customer. So there's a page 2, a page 3, and so on. But if you anyway print out everything, then there's no point in pagination other than limiting how long a single API call can take. Like that's why there's a limit of 5,000 in the API. But yeah, one other option would be that if you do receive apps, you just see the first 50 apps, and like in the same manner do the pagination. But like that's not the use case of the CLI. So I think it would be pretty easy to change that.
So the feedback from those users was SAP internal users is they want to have the information faster because usually there's a CFA, grab a name and etc. Yeah, it's more interactive. So this, you could also implement CF list applications in a way that it also streams, that it shows first 50 before it works. But at the moment, it's not implemented like this.
Yeah.
But I would fast and bang, then you have the information. That would be the nicest thing.
Yeah.
In 5 minutes. Okay, 800 apps in a space is big, but
we maybe should set a limit anyway, because
as a limit, it's configurable, but you know.
How much the API, the CLI returns?
No, how much apps you can have in a space via a quota, and you can also have a quota on the org, but
knowing our colleagues, I can imagine extreme use cases. So it may be advisable that there's some boundary where the CLI essentially says, yeah, you are out of the use case of the CLI. You have such a unique requirement that you should program against the API yourself and implement what you need. Yeah, because I can imagine that if you have like 10,000 apps in one space, you're doing things programmatically, in which case CLI may be not the best tool for that.
Okay, so next thing would be opening bugs for the single found issues, and then we can work on it.
Yeah, it seems like at least the page size should be a pretty easy change there.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that wasn't intentional. The N+1 issues will be more complicated, but there may be some better queries or solutions around those types of things.
Okay, yeah, the next thing topic is more complicated. Let's check. I have one. We've created an issue for that. No. Here we go. So it has to do with deletion of certain resources like org space, app, and service instance, I think, which delete the endpoint of in the cloud controller, delete recursively other contained resources. But if those resources require asynchronous service broker operations, then everything breaks, basically. So if you try to delete an application that has async service bindings, that's where the bugs pop up, because we have now the first service brokers that do that. Then actually you get an error that the delete could not be completed. An operation for service binding is still in progress, and that one then breaks. And the same is true for all the other. It's basically always the same. The asynchronous delete service broker operations is deleting a binding or deleting the service instance itself. And if you delete a space, you have the extra complex case where you want to delete a service instance, and you need, in order to do that, delete also the service bindings. And according to the Open Service Broker API spec, you have to do that sequentially. So first the bindings have to be deleted, and then you can delete the service instance. Yeah. So I guess this one needs, I don't know, redesign, re-implementation. And there are basically so two ideas. Both are not yet thought through, but just wanted to start the discussion about it and in which direction we could go. It's like that this original delete delayed job, for instance, of the deletion of a space or of an application, would then be re-enqueued as long as asynchronous operations with the service brokers are still running. But then we have to decide whether we delete all the service bindings in parallel or sequentially. If it shall be safe, you have to do it sequentially, because in theory, a service broker can decide not to support parallel operations, and the thing can get very lengthy. And additional questions then show up. If you have triggered such a deletion of an organization with many spaces, what happens if somebody tries to add new resources? Will it break? Should it be blocked? Should you lock somehow this organization? Yeah. How long do we want to wait for such operations? Yeah, error handling, of course, needs to point to the sub-resource that could not be deleted somehow, so that you can work on that. Another idea which may not work out is to delete, let's say, the parent resource immediately. The idea was for service bindings and service instances that we delete those instances directly from the cloud controller, like purging. Then we can continue with deleting everything else, up, space, org, that should work. And then we hope for the best that the service broker deletes those remaining instances according to the orphan mitigation spec. I don't know if that works out, and with the bindings and
that's a bold
instances, it won't
strategy.
work. Yeah,
I think you're gonna end up with you're gonna end up with a bunch of orphan services if you go down that path, probably.
Yeah. And that is expensive. So it's, yeah. So probably we need to think about this re-enqueuing somehow, but
yeah, so I mean, so in the worst case scenario, you have a very slow broker. You have like asynchronous bindings, you have a million asynchronous bindings all in your org, and you're trying to delete the org. And each one of those, takes up, whatever the max timeout is, a month, or whatever ridiculous huge timeout we set for that. So each of those million service bindings takes a month, and then deleting that org takes until the heat death of the universe. So that's like the worst case scenario there. But you would still theoretically run into that same problem if you were doing it manually, I guess.
Yeah.
So I think that's just a like weakness of the way that we handle asynchronous service bindings there. I guess there could be a middle step where we like soft delete the resource or something like that, where it's, you talked about what happens if you go and start creating more sub resources when the resource is already in the process of being deleted. It could be something where like, we soft delete the space or soft delete the org and say like, all right, no further resource creation is allowed in here because it's currently in the process of being deleted. And then we just like slowly grind through all the different service bindings and service instances.
Yeah, that means adding a state to all those resources. Like we have this inactive state for an org. It's maybe similar where you cannot do anything. Not exactly the same, but
right.
And then you need, of course, state transitions. So if I've started the deletion and then I see after 1 week it's not yet done and I want to stop it and deal with it manually, so sounds like complexity.
or I mean, the other option is you just let people continue to create things in the thing that's being deleted, and then at each re-enqueue or whatever, you look at your new slate of things to be deleted. So if I'm deleting an org and I'm spending a week deleting asynchronous service bindings, and someone has gone in and created a new space in there, the next time I pick up that work, I just go and delete that space again.
But then I need somehow to find out that this org is in deletion, because that is otherwise pretty surprising, right?
Yeah, it gives you some excitement.
The database mapper we use, like there's an extension we use for the created and updated ads, and I think it also has a deleted ads. So there's a mode you can run SQL in. I read it somewhere, I need to read it up again, but where like a model deletion, for example, also deletion of an asset, would not result in a deletion from the database. It will result in a deleted at timestamp being set. And then it reconstructs every query to honor the deletion date somehow. Like, saw that somewhere. Like, would also be an option. But yeah, I think the main problem is that we have a timeout for asynchronous operations for the off mitigation. So I think what's our timeout? 2 days, something? That's really short, but
a week or so, no? Week,
so
or where we
not
will reduce it to 1 day could be, but in this range, yeah, 1 day is already.
Yeah, but like per spec, the Open Service Broker API specs says that like the platform must do orphan mitigation, which means that they add up. So whatever you set in the orphan mitigation times the number of bindings plus 1 is the maximum time. And like per spec definition, I think there's no legal way around that. So if you do sequential unbinds, if you do parallel unbinds, then yeah, you could be a lot faster. Then it's just twice the off mitigation timeout. Yeah,
but even if it takes 1 day, let's stick to this value. It's already, you need to show that somehow to the user that a deletion is in progress and that you understand what is going on. Then it can take pretty long.
yeah, I mean the job that that you can query are not very informative, what they are currently doing. Yeah, but also like off mitigations of a day are a bit, I don't know, dangerous, because I mean if somebody is focused down because of an outage or something, they can't fix it for several days or something like that. Then yeah.
Yeah, okay, but in that case we would get an error from, right?
Yeah, but then the off mitigation runs. Yeah. And then currently we at some point in time we just say we consider this instance being deleted because the broker doesn't answer anymore. And that's the off mitigation timeout.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Don't
also,
have
the
a-
point is I think we might need to touch the spec if we and that's yeah. I think like the asynchronous use case is not implemented because it's also not implemented in the spec. Also it was not brought into the Open Service Broker API specification. And
what? Asynchronous operations are well specified.
the asynchronous, no, the recursive delete where yeah, where it's, for example, where it stays in some parts states that I can't remember the part anymore, but it says it's undefined. Like the behavior is undefined explicitly. And my opinion is it is undefined because it was never, like the driver of this spec is the cloud controller, and there the delete part or the recursive delete part was never implemented. So that's why the placeholder is still in this spec.
I mean,
so it might
another very simple option to solve this problem right now is to say as soon as there is one asynchronous binding inside, we abort the deletion and tell the user, bad luck, but asynchronous recursive deletion doesn't work yet. Please delete it yourself, and then you can rerun the deletion. I mean, that's basically the current behavior, but the error message at the moment is in a way that nobody understands what is going on.
Yeah.
Would also be a first step to make it better usable. People will hate us for that, but at the moment we basically tell them, yeah, you have to delete the stuff manually up front before you delete the space because it doesn't work otherwise.
I mean, in that case, you could potentially even do it at like time of issuing the delete request, like not even waiting for the job to fail.
Right. That's
What do you mean? I like the error.
Like, yeah, like you potentially have 2 times to return a user-friendly error. You could either return it in the job, like the job picks it up, starts going to do the delete and says, oh no, there's some asynchronous service bindings in here, and then return an error that's like asynchronous service binding detected, delete failed or whatever. Or you could do it when you're issuing the delete on the space or org, and so you don't even enqueue the asynchronous job, you just immediately are like, nope, not doing that.
I mean, depending on how we implement the delete with like delete markers or timestamps or something like that, we are also in the position that aborting deletion is not a thing, like asynchronous deletion, because you may have deleted some resources, for example, a space or the org, while the deletion of the broker's resources or instances and bindings are still in progress. And there's no good way to abort them, because then you're left with a situation of half the stuff is deleted, half the stuff is not. There's no transactionality, like you cannot roll back once you on a job level. Yeah. But yeah.
Could also implement something like we re-enqueue and wait, let's say a well-defined time, 5 minutes or something like that, which is still in the range that somebody would wait for a deletion of such a resource. And if then it's not finished, we simply give an error message and don't touch any other resources and leave it to the user. That's maybe it's not perfect. It may work 80% for those services where the deletion is fast and the service broker is working, which is not always the case. And for everything else, we leave the cleanup with the user.
I don't think that works. Like once the first binding is deleted and it worked, and the second binding fails, then you deleted one binding and the next binding fails.
Yeah, which is no problem, right?
Yeah, but then
I don't think
you error out. And, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. I've lost track on where we've landed on the side of this, but I don't think we generally make promises about these recursive deletes being transactional. Because especially, once you start bringing in external services, like there's not really anything we can do there unless you want to add transactions to the open service broker API.
No.
Fair. I mean, AWS does the same. So if you delete some resources on the AWS console, it iteratively, recursively deletes stuff. And if something fails, the resources are still there and need to manually clean them up. Yeah, okay, fair. Yeah. Can also say we do a best effort delete. But yeah, you shouldn't delete the org and the space. Otherwise, you cannot do anything anymore. But
you can't delete as long as there are service bindings inside. Just
from
the foreign key constraint. So this won't work. We have to do it in the right order, and it starts with service bindings, I guess, and
cool.
Then it will fail probably most likely on service bindings, and then if a broker is, for instance, not available or very slow, and then you give up. And if you are past service bindings and service instances, then you can delete the rest. If you start to delete service instances, so databases, and you that's where the real meat is, right? If the database is gone, then you don't care anymore for a space or for an application.
Sounds good though. Yeah, that's good. Okay, is there something in the doc? Like one
I type a little bit some.
Because I and Mark also have 2 topics.
Yeah. The next thing would be supported DBs and boundary conditions to rely on.
Oh, you wrote it down. Cool.
Yeah,
that's mine. Yeah, with the last few migrations, we had a bit of troubles. And like I found out, at least in my opinion, SQL does, in case of migrations, does a very it's a very thin abstraction layer. Like it essentially the whole benefit SQL gives you is it templates you the queries for different DBs, but what it templates is just replacing codes mostly. Like there's not many logic in there. And we found out the databases have a lot of differences. And those are not like mapped by SQL. So we wrote it down in a markdown file that's in the migration folder. It's very interesting to read. Well, yeah, some things, yeah, so for example, so I maybe get into what we did. So we tried to remove a race condition in the annotations updating flow. So that's done in each endpoint individually. So you just pass on an annotation. And if you do 2 concurrent requests, there's no unique constraint on the database. That means both will check if there's an entry with a specific key, and both API requests will come to the conclusion there's no row yet in the database with such a key because bad timing. And then they will both insert the same data into the API, into the database. And then we thought, easy, just add a unique constraint. That works for Postgres, but it doesn't for MySQL because the key column was a varchar 1000, and MySQL doesn't allow this. In MySQL, it's a bit more technically limited, so you just are allowed to have several hundred bytes or something. I don't know numbers anymore. So then we thought, why is this even varchar 1000? Let's reduce it to varchar 63, because that's the length the cloud controller limits in the API logic anyway. So there's no single key, there should be no single key longer than 63 characters. And then we found that null is behaving differently between databases. So in Postgres, you can create a unique constraint that treats null as a value. And in MySQL, null is always its own value. So if you have a null value inside of your unique constraint, it's not. So if you have, for example, key 1 and then key prefix is null, and you insert this twice, then both of them are unique values because null is never equal to null. So and then we needed to change that and insert empty strings instead of null because of differences in the DBs. And this goes on. Like there's a whole list. The migration is so complex because there's ifs and else, if Postgres, if MySQL, and we weren't aware that we actually don't use MySQL in CF2 deployment. We use Percona XtraDB. And I recently also thrown out MariaDB out of the unit tests because, I think it still runs with MariaDB. Like the unit tests in the Concourse pipeline still run with MariaDB. So I think we have a small identity crisis what the supported databases are. And also we never documented boundary conditions. So there's a document stating we support MySQL and Postgres. There are no flavors documented, and there are also no configurations documented. So for example, your user must have following grants on the database. That because otherwise we cannot be sure that a customer, for example, can lock tables because they could have different user permissions. And this made the whole migration really, really messy. And yeah, and in the end we settled for like the Percona XtraDB to be not completely safe. So when we do the migration, we remove all duplicates and set a unique constraint. But in this time frame, you must be sure nobody inserts new duplicates. Otherwise, the migration fails because you cannot set a unique constraint when there's a duplicate in the table. And so we just did, I hope, a normal thing to lock the table for writes for this small period of time. So all writes will hang until the migration is through. Deleted all duplicates at a unique constraint. But this is now not true for Percona XtraDB because there we just optimistically try to remove duplicates at a unique constraint. If it fails, we try again until eventually, succeed. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, what we should do there. Like documentation for sure, but what should we write into it? So should we also add Percona and MariaDB, or like I would be like the MariaDB sounds like MySQL compatible, but like one version was where they branched out, but now it's like completely different. So it's dangerous to have like there's already enough trouble we have with Postgres and MySQL, and I would like to keep this as small as possible.
Yeah, well, I think the situation might even be worse than you think it is, which is not only does this apply to Cloud Controller, it also applies to the other Cloud Foundry components that use the database, because it's quite common to use the same database server for all of the different components that use persistence. So in fact, even though, and this is probably just due to the chaos of time, even though it sounds like CAPI is testing against MariaDB, I'm pretty sure CF deployment has dropped support for MariaDB due to incompatibilities with the UAA database driver or database library there. So I think in order to like really get this right, we'd have to, I think, do it at the CF deployment layer, not at the CAPI layer. Because it's like a intersection of the databases that all the different components are compatible with for CF deployment. So yeah, I think we should probably drop any usage of MariaDB in general, just because people won't actually be able to use it for CF deployment because it's incompatible with UAA and CredHub. But yeah, I don't know. And then the Percona DB thing, like I think so Percona itself tries to be, unlike MariaDB, tries to be very close to mainline MySQL, but a lot of the complexity that comes in there is because of it's a clustered database. So that's the reason why table locking generally isn't available, because it would lead to consistency issues for a clustered database. So even though there's like a whole nother dimension there, because even though it's a like quote unquote vanilla MySQL that then locks things down to support Galera. So
do you think that Percona Galera has to be supported, or can we drop it just from usage point of view? I mean, from SAP point of view, the answer is easy, but I guess you have another view on it.
Yeah, so are you using IaaS database, like RDS or whatever?
And only Postgres.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, on the Broadcom VMware side or whatever, Percona support is required.
Okay, then it's very simple.
It's what we use for all of our on-premises deployments, where we don't have all these lovely IaaS provided databases. If we could use Amazon RDS, we totally would, because it's awesome. But not everyone has an Amazon data center in their data center, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
In that case, I would start with talking with Jochen about APR, where we simply specify it on CF deployment, which databases we would like to support, and then we could ask all the working groups to comment on it, and then go
Yeah.
from there, right?
And we can link to that from CAPI release or wherever is appropriate.
And then we can adapt, of course, and all the unit testing, etc., and know also what is the constraints for the next complex migrations.
That means about also documenting the flavors we use. So MySQL Percona and Postgres and every YAS flavor. I mean,
But yeah, I mean,
you won't get it complete.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to do exhaustive testing, but we should probably at least consider trying to do testing in the pipeline against Percona, since that is like the default database or default MySQL used by CF deployment. I mean, we don't run into it that often. Table locking happens to be like the big one that we run into from time to time. But this is potentially setting us up for a case where something will pass in the like cloud controller unit test, but then fail when it goes to integrate with a actual running CF deployment.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we have final topic, open telemetry traces.
Yeah, that's my point. I would to just quickly introduce myself so you know why I'm here. I'm a student at SAP, and therefore in my current rotation, I'm working in the department of the cloud controller, and therefore I'm in this meeting as well. And my current topic is to enhance and expand the performance metric collection for the cloud controller. And for that, we chose to use OpenTelemetry. I can also show you something which we already implemented. I think it's this one. I hope you can see my web browser now. It may take some time. It doesn't allow me to share. I don't know why.
Make permissions, like
Yeah, that could be possible, maybe. No. Maybe now. Oh, yeah. Oh, I think my system preferences don't allow it. Oh no.
Yeah, and then you have to restart the client. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's not so good. Okay, we don't use Zoom.
But we can also just talk about it. Like it's fine.
That's also fine. Yeah. Okay. But OpenTelemetry creates traces to get more details about the requests it gets. And we, for example, set up a trace for the middleware, so we can see how long the request takes in the middleware, and also for the application itself, so we can differentiate there. And our aim is to get even more insights. So when a request takes pretty long, that we can identify which component was guilty, so to say, and then that we can fix the problem. And yeah, we just wanted to get some feedback, maybe some inspiration or things we should consider there. And yeah.
Opinions on OpenTelemetry. Yeah.
Huh?
Are there any opinions of OpenTelemetry? Like, would this be a thing that could make it, or there's even a use case on your side?
So I know that there are definitely people who are interested in OpenTelemetry. I think they're primarily looking at it for application metrics via OpenTelemetry.
Yes, that's what they're looking at on the Logarithm teams and other pieces of observability.
Yeah. So as part of the eternal quest to get rid of the Logarithm fire hose, they're looking at using OTel as a metrics egress method. Specifically, well, I think it would be for both application and system metrics. So that is definitely a group that is actively working on OpenTelemetry stuff. I'm not that directly involved with it, but I'd be happy to forward you along to chat with them if you want to see what type of stuff they're currently working on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, would definitely be interesting. Yeah, sounds good. And now I think somehow it worked. I didn't have to restart the client. Can you see my screen now, my web browser?
Yep.
Okay, so I could just quickly show you. For example, like OpenTelemetry creates a lot of traces automatically, like these ones here, like the commit, select, and everything. But as already mentioned, there are also some traces we set up, and now you could just see like how long this request took in the middleware and in the application, and even more in-depth information, for example, about a few database select statements, for example, in this case. And yeah, just to show you how it works, you can also see the select statement here and figure out what it was all about. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, currently, the current thing is just emitting logs, right? Like, that's the only thing we currently have. So, I mean, it would be optional anyway. So you just configure it if you want to use it, and if you don't want to use it, then you don't. But I think it could be of benefit when trying to find some very explicit things in the cloud controller.
So I mean, Cloud Controller does have an existing New Relic integration.
Right. Yeah.
So I could see
The thing is-
this like slotting along kind of in that same way for if you want more detailed tracing of operations there.
Thing is company policy, so we're not allowed to use New Relic. That means, like, at least for us,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
there's
I'm not saying that you should use New Relic instead. I'm just saying there's some prior art in place for doing something
Yeah.
like this.
All right.
You know, if you want, you could go in and add Dynatrace also, and I'm sure there's some other ones going on in that area.
Yeah, what with OpenTelemetry, if then you are open what comes with the tooling, I think it would be a good contribution if we have that inside.
Yeah, you have no vendor login like a New Relic. Just
Yeah.
Cool. Then sounds promising. We'll continue with that.
Okay, any other topics from your side? We talked a lot.
I don't think I have anything. Greg, was there anything on your mind?
I guess the only thing is I submitted some PRs for Rails upgrades. It seems like they're very easy. So it's either actually very easy or it's deceptively easy. So the only bit the only bit that was a bit interesting was switching the Rails autoloader. But it seems like we don't really use the autoloader anyway. So I mostly just excluded everything, and then it seemed to still function. But I know there was originally an issue that was like we should do this by the end of 2023. So it's a little bit past the end of 2023, but those are out there.
But I remember a problem that we had in the past with Rails upgrades. Wasn't there an issue because the delay jobs framework works in a way that it writes code into the database, and if you upgrade the Rails framework, there is some code written into the database with Rails 6.
Yeah, the TLDR for it was they used a different structure, so your workers couldn't talk to your new cloud controllers. And they worked eventually, but as I think the issue, I forget who wrote it up, but the issue from your side, I believe, was basically like, yeah, it worked eventually, but also we were down for like an hour.
Yeah, deployments take long. Like there are many cloud controllers, so it takes long. Yeah, I don't know if this is tested. I don't think so, right? So
well, there's one test for apply manifest for the serialization format of delayed jobs. We talked about it today with Philip. That one checks it, and we would run this test, or it runs as a unit test in both directions, old, new, old. And we had the idea that we grab a few serialization records from a live database and try to run that, whether we can deserialize it with Rails 7.
Yeah,
Just
assuming
to do some testing.
Yeah, assuming I understand the issue correctly, I think you could run into this with like really any change, like any library or code change that modifies the modifies any of the objects that are serial or marshaled into the delayed job could potentially result in this problem. So I don't know, that's pretty scary.
I started to look through the Rails changes today, but it was like it was too much to go through. Like it's like endless release notes. So, but I had one idea in mind, which was like you could take a foundation, like a bubble environment or so, and run like deploy just some API nodes with the new version, and then run cuts, for example, against it, and then see how the workers handle it, and then you could manually test both directions. I mean, could be a bit challenging to automate that, but yeah, not sure. That was just an idea I had today.
PCR. What is?
Yeah, so this is like a way for I believe automatically recording HP fixtures. So if you're like reaching to an external service, then you like reach to the external service for real once and record the response as a fixture, and then like you can check if the fixture changed or not. So this is a lot of work, but theoretically you could do something where like you record a well-known marshaled object at a version, and then in the next version you calculate that same well-known marshaled object. There's probably some timestamps and stuff there that will make that difficult, but then you compare A to B and see if anything changed. It's a fair bit of work, but it would theoretically prevent against any unintentional changes to how delayed jobs are marshaled.
Yeah, it's a bit similar to the migration. So for migrations, I did add a CI job that essentially migrates the database to the newest version, then checks out the old code and runs the unit tests. And there you would see if some unit tests can cope with the new schema of like running the old code. And then I think works pretty well. So I think one might also need to do something like that, like check out the new code, insert some delay jobs, then check out the old code and do the same and check the results. But that's not something like the Aspect framework can do.
Yeah, and delayed jobs is like there's different possibilities, right? I guess there's an infinite number of how you can combine delayed jobs.
No.
I mean, we started with space apply manifest because this is like one of the most important ones. But I mean, as soon as services are involved, etc., then it becomes much more complex.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could theoretically intentionally get a deployment where your workers and cloud controller were running different versions, and then run cats against that, and that might do the right thing. The problem there is you have both forwards and backwards, or I guess deploy order is fixed. So,
but you could do this like with bubble environments, and then just run like the integration tests run two additional environments.
Maybe that's a good idea. I mean, we would not like to run again into such a problem. Of course, now we are aware when this Rails update comes, we can hopefully find it on the staging landscapes. Last time we found it on a big live landscape where the update takes 8 hours. And
I'm just not sure
was-
it's like Rails touches a lot of stuff, so you're maybe more likely to hit it with Rails, but theoretically, like you could bump some random other library and it could change the method signature on something and then also break.
That's
If it's being marshaled into a job. The original sin here was delayed job using marshalling as its method of enqueuing objects.
this won't change so easily,
Yeah.
right? Because then you have for the change a big migration work. Yeah, okay. I guess now the Rails 7 change. So from our point of view, we would like to ask to wait, let's say 2 more weeks or something like that. We would not put it on the very, it should get in the next month or so, but we would like to run some tests before we merge it.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I don't think we're burning to have it merged.
Cool. Right.
So there's one, probably you have seen it, this one little thing, the last DB migration with this degenerate deployments is broken. So we will probably tomorrow or day after tomorrow provide a fix and then release everything up to CF deployment so that the upgrades are not stopped anymore. For now, it's a bad idea to deploy CF deployment, I don't know, 35.4 or something. So CAPI 168 is broken basically. Because the deletion of these degenerate deployments, jobs which are outdated, which can be deleted, do not recursively delete, what was it, deployment processes. That's not part of the model in contrast to labels and annotations. And that's something we oversaw during the migration step and needs to be added. Yeah, but no, I'm finished.
All right, cool.
Then see you in 4 weeks.
See you.
See you.
Bye-bye.
See you.
See
Bye-bye.
you. Bye bye.